the secret sauce of those who are in the sustainability space is that those who we're dealing with tend to actually want to collaborate with us because it is such a
Yeah.
large problem. It's not just one organization feeling it. It's across the board that we need to work on it together. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really think collaboration is key. It's not, and when you first start in sustainability, and you have to present and you're trying to gain traction, you're going to talk about the return on sustainability, return on investment, and you're going
Yeah.
to try to build that case, and you're going to try to demonstrate, that it can be a differentiating factor. And for sure, how you market it and how you do it could really help differentiate yourself. But at the end of the day, you have to work with, industry. You have to work with your competitors. You have to work with government. You have to work with so many people. So yes, you can differentiate yourself, but you absolutely cannot do this alone in a silo. You need to work across your value chain.
And you briefly touched on some of the obstacles or bottlenecks that the
Yeah.
industry might be facing. Are there any that you're really kind of seeing the whole industry trying to tackle together or independently? Any key themes that you've seen
Well,
emerge?
absolutely. I mean, decarbonization is a huge challenge, and the biggest obstacle that our industry faces is it's the technological obstacles. I mean, it's achievement that we can fly. Like every time I take a plane, I'm like, this is amazing. We are flying. It's a difficult technology, and the planes that we have, they're 30 years. It's not a technology that changes overnight. And in order to get electric planes or hybrid planes, we are still a long way away from that,
Mhm.
especially for long haul flights, because it's a weight issue. Batteries weigh a lot. So we are very far, yes, we're going to have electric planes for very small regional flights, and that's going to come, and that's amazing. And that's what's going to help us get to the next step. So technology is a huge obstacle for our industry. And it's an industry that's growing. So there's more people flying. We're trying to get to net zero by 2050. More people are flying. The technology is not there yet. So it's a huge challenge in order to reduce our emissions. And so the opportunity is around sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, which people have been talking a lot about. But
Yeah.
there's obstacles there as well. It works, it's there, but it's not available at scale. And so that's a huge challenge. There's no commercially available SAF in Canada. And so really working with the government and working with industry producers in order to get SAF produced is a huge challenge for us. A SAF roadmap was just launched actually last week, June 5th, which kind of builds, on what is needed, but it's very complex. So that's a big bottleneck. That's a big obstacle, and absolutely have to work with the entire value chain in order to get that going.
And with Air Transat based here in Canada, are you seeing nuances in how airlines approach sustainability, environmental and social side between countries, or is it
Yeah,
dependent on regulations and
that's a really
regulatory?
good question. Actually, that's something that I was not I didn't, I wasn't fully prepared for that when I joined this industry. I remember like leaving pulp and paper and being like, okay, I won't have to do so much permitting. It's like going to be less compliance.
Yeah.
And I was like a bit of a wake up call, because the challenge with the airline industry is that you are operating across numerous jurisdictions. So you leave one airspace with a set of rules and regulations, and then you enter into another airspace with a
Ah,
whole other set of rules and regulations that are all changing. And it's very, very complex. So in Europe is more advanced, actually, much more advanced in their regulation, and their framework is very different. And of course, you have the EU, and then you have the UK that's doing something different. But in Europe, they're using a bit more of what I would call a stick approach. So they have, for example, mandates for SAF. Whereas in the US, also very advanced with regards to sustainable aviation fuel, but more of a carrot approach, where they're saying here's incentives, tax breaks in order to increase the use of SAF. So there's definitely differences with regards to decarbonization. We do have the International Council for Airline, like ICAO, that tries to consolidate certain international regulations, especially around climate. So that is helpful. But even for waste, for example, the federal government in Canada has a single-use plastic regulation that came out recently, and
right.
then the EU has some as well. But it's like the regulation is like, well, when you're in the plane in Canadian airspace, you can't do this, but as soon as you cross into another airspace. But that doesn't work for airlines. When we purchase something, it's we have to make sure that we purchase and put something on board that's going to work across all of our jurisdictions. So it's you have to really navigate the regulations that are different from space-based. So that is definitely an added complexity. Yeah.
That's really interesting because I come from the built space, and where a building
Yeah.
is where you find the building.
I did too. So that was not something
Yeah.
I was
So
was
where do you
prepared
find
for.
that that is positive in the sense that airlines are almost having to use the highest common denominator in terms of where the strictest laws are or what they need to apply, even
I
in a
think
country where
so.
maybe, yeah.
I think so for sure, but I think it's I think that does help in order to push people into the airlines into a certain, the like you said, the highest denominator. It's more an administrative complexity. And we want to have value added, but the regulations and the administrative side of all the reports that have to be done for the EU and then the UK and then Canada, we have so many reports. It's like that, but that's not value added. So if they could at least consolidate on like the reporting requirements and and just how the regulations are deployed would for sure be easier for us. So we would be able to put our efforts into more value added initiatives and not just reporting all the time. So, but yes, I think it can be a positive, but there's some downsides for sure.